Hey everyone, welcome back to another video and the beginning of our next video series. So right here, obviously you guys can see this is a Supra, but it's a very different Supra and it's a very extreme version of one. So this car is my friend Don at Accelerated Performance's car. And I have a bit of history with this car that we'll get into in a little bit. But first off, let's just kind of take this thing in and do a walk around of what all is going on here. So starting from the front, we have a beautiful billet block 2JZ. This is a 3-liter engine, aluminum rod, all of that. It's a 2JZ GTE cylinder head. I don't know exactly what he has as far as cams and all of that are concerned. You can see the dry sump pump there, the dry sump drive mandrel off the front of the balancer, big Aeromotive mechanical fuel pump. We have a Pro-J billet intake manifold that is actually set up for 18 injectors, although Don is just using 12. He has some ID primaries and some big boy Fuel-Tech secondaries. This is a Turbo 400 car. Has a nice M&M shifter on the inside of it right there. If you guys can see, let me zoom in a little bit. But that fancy logo right there is pretty special. And the logo is not just seen there. This car is powered by a nice, again if I can zoom in, Motec M150 box right there. We have some nitrous, we have some CO2 and things like that. Out back is where it gets really interesting. You can see that it has some quite large tires on it, as well as a narrow, I'm assuming a 9-inch rear end, twin parachutes, and beautiful Mazfab carbon drag wing, so on and so forth. This thing is the real deal. You can see the one-piece front end right next to me here. And this car is here for a pretty wild turbo system. So my history with this car, years ago, Don approached me with the idea to build a big twin setup. used two Force Performance, they were GT45 based 80 millimeter turbos. We built a really wild setup for it. Still a turbo 400, still all of that. A pretty cool Siamese exhaust. A really, really neat setup. And to my knowledge, it was the biggest twin turbo setup, at least that I've ever seen on one of these cars. And we put it together in record time for TX2K that year. We took the car down there, ended up having some issues with it, and he tried to play around with it a little bit from what I recall, and ultimately ended up going back to a big single setup just for simplicity's sake and making it easier to work on the car. Fast forward to now, and we've been kicking around the idea of building a new setup for this car for a little while now. He took it out, did some testing with it earlier this year, ended up swapping ECUs, and now the car sits in the state that you see it here and now. So the car has been, I believe, it's been in the sixes, maybe a 670 or something along those lines. I forget what it's gone in the eighth, but the car is very fast. It will just keep getting faster. And the car is here now to build this new turbo system for it. Chassis-wise, this car is pretty all-encompassing and pretty extreme. So you can see all of the tube structure, and the cool thing with these tubes is they actually go through the upper frame rail and tie into the rest of the cage. They just run along the inside of it in a nice clean fashion, and it gives me some ideas of some additional supports I'd like to put in place on the silver car. But inside, we have a 25-something chassis. You can see all the funny car cage, all of the door X's, all of everything else going on here. There's much more tube structure on the bottom of the car that we probably won't get to see, unfortunately, as I don't think I'll need to raise this car up in the air for anything. But it's definitely a really solid, really nice chassis. And the most important part, as in drag racing, the chassis doesn't really mean a whole lot of anything until you have your nice stickers on the side. So this is a 6.0 and slower chassis, as evidenced by the stamp right above my index finger right here. And it's a pretty wild, pretty cool setup. You can also see on the inside of it the carbon nitrous bottle, all of the other tanks and bottles and various pressure reservoirs, all the carbon tub work, carbon throughout, the carbon dash, everything else. It's a really cool, really neat setup. Don's done a great job putting this car together, and it's going to go really, really fast. So the crew at Tycon Industries and Stainless Bros, or I should say the owners of the company, they are old school super guys. And they've known Don for a long time. I've known them for a long time as well. And ultimately, we're building this new wild setup for the car that we're going to start and going to knock out in this video series. So with that in mind, we have all kinds of goodies from them. This is a titanium box right here full of all the components for all of the tie work. This is a stainless box for all of the header work. We have some Stainless Headers Manufacturing dual slip collectors, 2 3-into-1s, 1 2-into-1, where if I can make it a tri-Y header, I'll do so. If not, then it'll be what it is. We have a bunch of straight tubing in these two boxes right here, these longer boxes. Some aluminum to knock out a bunch of the actual charge air system on the car. And right here we have kind of a couple of the stars of the show. We have this big Precision ProMod 94 Turbo. This also is one of the ones that, if you guys can see there, those bolts, those are cross bolts. And those are becoming more and more mandated nowadays in turbo drag racing, as if the turbine wheel comes apart, the point of those cross bolts is to break up the turbine wheel so you're not sending an entire turbine wheel off into the ethers. It's supposed to make it a bit safer, and little bits of frag, while they still can do damage and still can hurt people, it's much less of an issue as opposed to an entire turbine wheel coming out. So beyond the turbo, we have this pretty nice tile 60 millimeter compressed gas wastegate. this is a nice piece and it will work well for Don on this setup. We have here this big boy shear intercooler that this will be the beginning of the project, getting this thing mounted and put in place, and we'll go over the intercooler more at that point in time. So we really aren't trying to reinvent the wheel with this turbo system. The turbo we placed in kind of a semi-normal location, and when I went to pick the car up, Don and I went over everything as far as the packaging is concerned and everything along those lines, and I think we have a pretty solid game plan of something that should be reasonably possible to make everything fit. The header will be the tight portion, and that'll be the most complex of all of this, as what looks like a fair amount of room here right now will rapidly go away as I start running tubes and fitting collectors and everything along those lines in there. I think it should still be plenty feasible, but we won't know until we actually get into it, and I will do my best to get all this knocked out and get this beautiful new setup ready to go and race and show at the Imports vs. Domestics race. Now, as I progress through this build, I will do my best to be as detailed as I possibly can. I'll take you through kind of the thought process, considerations, little nuances that I like to apply to projects like this, as we haven't really covered anything this wild before on the channel. We've gone over a bunch of what went into the Mark IV build, or my Mark IV build, but it's a far stretch from that car to this car, and we're going to do things a little bit differently on this one. We've gone over a ton of street car stuff, not so much actual race car stuff, and I look forward to showcasing all of this, all of that. And although tubing is tube, bends are bends, fabrication is fabrication, there are some different considerations, some different thoughts that need to be applied to a car like this, as opposed to any of my cars that we've worked through on the channel thus far. So the goal for this car and the goal for this project is to knock it out kind of in record time. We decided to start on this project now, which we're only a few weeks away from when World Cup Finals in Maryland is going to be happening. It's the big Imports versus Domestics race that, if you guys have not seen it, pause this video, go look it up. It is my favorite race of the year. You'll see records set, records broken, crazy fast passes, really cool cars, and just things that seem to defy the laws of physics happening at that beautiful track at Budds Creek, Maryland. So unfortunately, I won't be able to make the race this year. I have some pre-existing obligations. As much as I would love to be there, it is not the correct thing to do to try to skip out on these obligations. But I can still be there in spirit and still be there with a bit of my work as we knock out the turbo setup on this car. So the first order of business with this project will be mounting the intercooler. We won't get into that in this episode. That will be the subject of the next episode. But we have a few modifications to do to it. We have to get it mounted, and we have a pretty trick way that we are going to accomplish the mounting. Still using these threaded bosses right here, but doing something where we aren't really altering the chassis at all from the way that it is currently. Is with the tight timeline that is associated with this project at this point in time, I need to make sure that I don't put any new components in the way of any old components, so that way if I'm not able to knock this out in the timeline that I have, the old setup can go back on the car and they can still go and race at World Cup, and we can finish up the setup at a later date. I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. I'm going to do everything in my power to get this knocked out for its World Cup debut, but anything can happen. And I guess we will see what happens as this project progresses. So there you have it. A nice little once over, hopefully hitting a lot of the details of arguably the craziest car that I've had in the shop to date. Now, if there are any portions of this that you guys are interested in that I did not touch on, feel free to leave comments below, and I will do my best to either answer them myself, or if I don't have a definitive actual answer, I'll reach out to Don, or maybe he'll even reach out in the comment section to answer the questions that you guys have about this car. It has a long history. Don's had it for a long time. He's done an incredible job building this thing, and I'm just very happy that I have the opportunity to continue building parts for it, to continue this relationship, to continue my little bit of history with this very historic, very cool car that essentially has played a large role in all of our lives. So with all of that being said, that is a quick intro to the next build series, the next project on the channel, and what you will see me working on for the next few videos. I'm not sure exactly what the video schedule is going to be, as I would like to finish this series off before World Cup happens, but we will wait and see what happens, see how much progress I make, see if I'm actually able to get all this work done or not. But I'm pretty confident being able to do so. But with all that being said, that will be about the end of this one. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. So thank you guys as always for coming along on all these different journeys, all these adventures with me. I hope that you guys are excited to see a pretty wild race car turbo system come together. I look forward to documenting it, showing some of the nuances of how I build things like this, some of the thoughts and considerations, and so on and so forth. And this will be hopefully one of my favorite turbo systems that I've built to date, as well as one of, if not the fastest. But we will get to that in due time. And I guess the next video that you guys will see will be the beginning of the work on this car. So a huge thank you to the Tycon and Stainless Bros crew for providing all of the materials for this build for us, giving us the opportunity to knock out all of this work and to build, again, a really cool setup for a really cool car. So I'm really looking forward to this build. Can't wait to get started on it, and I can't wait to take you guys along with me. But with all of that being said, and before I ramble on any more, that will be the end of this one. So as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Check out the website for Manifolds, for merch, for all things good that way, including my 15th anniversary t-shirts and hoodies that are still available through the end of 2024. So scoop those up before 2025 comes around, as they will be discontinued and no more at that point in time. But with all of that being said, that will be the end of this one, and I will see you guys in the next episode.